phone at 6 o'clock. This is always the issue.
Mr. Hawthorne, would you speak so we can see if she can?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes. If my cat weren't meowing so loudly, it would be easier.
Well, if you feed him today.
I might go try to put him outside. Oh, this is going to be distracting. Okay, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is our special called meeting, replacing yesterday's meeting because it was Veterans Day. So we'll start with announcements and communications. First of all, I want to just say thank you to all of our veterans on staff and in our community and at large for your service. It's no small feat, and you're greatly appreciated. Also, other announcements. I am chairing the meeting remotely tonight because I have a fever and I'm not feeling well, but it's an important meeting, so I wanted to make sure I'm present. So I just ask that I can see Thomas clearly, Mr. Councilmember Torrent. I'll just kind of wave if I need to interject in any kind of way. But yeah, any other announcements and communication? All right. Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda of the day?
I move that we adopt the agenda of the day.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Wonderful. And let's move on to the next order of business here. The public comment. So 3 minutes each. I can't tell if there's any public present, but
There's
they
one.
are. Okay, I'm going to stop Blair Witch projecting you here, Thomas. Sorry about that. Okay, no public. So let's move on with the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
All right, second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Our first item of business is Resolution R 2025-66. This is the dam remediation project. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Kendrick. Thomas, would it be possible to turn me around so I can see Mr. Kendrick? Thank you. Wow, hello everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. Perfect.
Good afternoon, everyone. So what we're proposing is we have, as you recall, we presented the dam inspection report in October, and it came up with a couple of recommendations that needed to be implemented in order to make sure that the dam itself was in a viable condition, and that included removing vegetation off of the downstream slope, which is the slope that is nearest to Snapfinger Creek, and also the vegetation on the upstream slope, which is the alders closest to the lake. So what we have here is we've got bids for various different phases of the project. Avalon Tree is our vegetation management consultant. They'll be removing the upstream dam vegetation and the downstream dam vegetation. And if you would take a look at the renderings that I included in the packet, it shows you what the present day condition of both the upstream and downstream look like, and a rendering of what is the ideal condition that the dam upstream and the downstream will look like after the project is concluded. And that is including after the vegetation has been removed on the upstream side or slope, that it would be stabilized with type 3 riprap. We're estimating approximately 200 tons of material to get this done. And the upstream side is simply be derooting the large trees and, you know, mowing the slope down to a consistent level, and so that we'll never get the trees back. As you also recall, this is not a registered dam, but it's our recommendation that we need to maintain the dam going forward in such a manner as a registered dam in order, you know, for compliance and to make sure that, you know, we satisfy our obligations maintaining the structure in that manner. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
The upstream side, we're gonna have riprap, or
Yes.
is that called riprap?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What is the effect of people standing, walking, climbing around on the riprap? Is it stable no matter what, or is that going to be an issue if we have people fishing from that riprap?
I think we back to the what we discussed previously before about fishing in the lake and those types of things, or whether we can, you know, have no fishing areas or those types of things.
Well, I noticed that the riprap that's near the bridges,
Yeah,
that people are walking on that,
yeah.
knocking the riprap down into the lake, seems to me, I don't know, maybe there's a way that this can be held back and that wouldn't happen, but I would maybe call on our city attorney to say, if this was going to cause damage to the dam, then are we able to say that that people cannot fish from this area?
That's likely true, yes, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. It would require some additional thought before I give you a final answer to that question, but that's at least a possible answer to your concern. The other thing I would suggest to you is that depending on the size riprap that AECOM is considering, clambering around on it is often quite dangerous and often quite an easy way to break your leg quite horrendously. So we can also add that as additional justification for why we don't want people doing that, or putting signs up saying it's not allowed, so that when somebody does fall and break a leg or, you know, crack their heads open, they at least have actual warning that we have said, don't do this, it's dangerous. Now, of course, the city's got some immunity, but our immunities last just as long as the legislature lets them last. So the more we can do to sort of get ahead of those kinds of questions and limit our liability, the better off I am with that kind of proactive policy making on your part. But what I would ask is that as this project is developed and as the Public Works Director goes through this project with the engineers, that I get involved in some of those discussions to talk about sizing and placement of the riprap, as well as the signage that we can consider and where it would be most effective to place that signage.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about on the downstream slope. I know the artistic rendering is not true to what we have in existence because it doesn't show the shelf we have, that flattened area towards the bottom of parts of the downstream slope. And there were specifically trees planted there at that time that were planned in terms of what types of trees and the location. So is that, I don't see any mention about the shelf.
That's got to be a future project, because what we need to do to determine is maintenance responsibilities, and we got an issue. It's kind of like a side issue with the north side of the creek about property lines, and that's going to be further defined by that topographic and bathymetric survey. And once we get that back, then we'll have a clear delineation of maintenance responsibilities. There was, you and I was talking with the former mayor about what happened in the 2011 project, of where the maintenance responsibilities, we considered those to be that. But every time we start going through some things, we find out something different. Because some of the residents have approached the city about, what is it, deeding over or not, or granting an easement to the city to maintain that bank, because previously those residents had cleaned off the bank and left the vegetation, and the city disposed of it. But one of the previous city managers put an end to that, and so now they're back, asking that question: can they do it again? But we get into these little areas about, once again, maintenance responsibilities. We do know that there's a sewer line in there, so there should be a sewer easement for DeKalb County.
Yeah.
Then, coupled with, we're supposed to have these, maintenance easements in there, but it's not clearly defined. But once they get back and do an actual survey, they'll do, boundary lines and property lines, and they'll do the legal descriptions and determine if there is an easement or dedicated easement, or is it implied easement, all those different things. And then we can take a look at that and find out what our exact responsibilities will be.
Okay.
But they also, one of the things that was like a third project here that I asked folks to give us quotes on, but it became difficult because of the access to the creek.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that's driving the cost up, that, we gotta consider. And plus, the timing, because we don't really wanna do it in the rainy season, because then the creek will be up too high. So we're kinda still looking at that part of it. But
Right.
all the vegetation and trees all the way down to that shelf will be removed. It's just what we need to do. One of the recommendations at the toe of the slope on the downstream side is to put larger riprap at that toe.
And you're talking about the trees that are on the lake side of the creek,
No.
not the homeowner's side of the creek.
Say that again.
So the shelf I was asking about is on the lake side of the creek.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay. And I know when that work was originally done, it was planted with wildflowers so that it wouldn't have to be a mowed, and obviously the wildflowers have not survived. But if it's going to be all planted as grass, then that adds a huge maintenance burden for your department.
Yeah, and it's a specialized maintenance issue, because it's and I spoke about this before,
Yeah, the slope.
like a slope mower.
Yeah.
And then we get into sizing of that type of slope mower, because what we got to further define is a weight limit, for the dam itself also. And if it's slope mower is too heavy or exceeds the weight limit for the dam, now we're talking about accessing through the creek, which would require us to bench off into the creek to get equipment down into it, and and all that stuff. But like I say, goes timing.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do it when there's the least amount of flow in the creek, kind of thing.
Mr. Kendrick, is there a good reason why we wouldn't consider riprap on the downstream slope as you have on the upstream slope?
We are considered, but like I said, that's part of that third project.
I'm thinking about like up to the point where it's level up on top. I'm talking about riprapping
The whole slope.
that slope. I recognize that's steep in cost
Yes.
in terms of the riprap,
Mm-hmm.
but the maintenance is
Yeah.
zero.
Well,
Or
I'll
not
take
zero, but low.
Low. Yeah, I'll take a look at it, but I mean, you know, that's one of those things you can look at, but you know, but I'll look at it.
Can I add something to that thought? My experience in having riprap, because we do it a lot in work for creek beds and things, and while it doesn't, like, it stabilizes, I would be concerned that different, tree species, like your sweet gums and pines and poplars and things, are going to get in the cracks and sprout, and it might actually become harder on that steep slope because of then it don't have really like a mowable surface, but I'm sure that out.
Yeah, like I say, that's like the third project, and we really had to back up, and because of the access part, it was like, give that a real consideration. But yeah, we'll look at all of that. But I wasn't ready to bring that one forward at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I have concerns.
Sure.
And I didn't really know the best way to talk about it, so I consulted the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. Their Environmental Protection Division has a really good thing on stream bank and shoreline stabilization. I'm just going to read from some of it. They've got on the table of contents preferred practices, live staking, bush mattresses, vegetated geogrid, then acceptable practices, joint planting, live crib wall, and then discouraged practices, rock riprap. So I'm just going to read some. And streams with well-established vegetation on their banks provide for better water quality and fish and wildlife habitats. Vegetation is extremely important for the biological, chemical, and physical health of the stream, as well as the stability of the system. Causes of erosion. Human activities contributing to or accelerating the natural stream bank or shoreline erosion process includes clearing natural vegetation, often done by landowners to expand views or increase recreational areas. It destroys the roots of plants that provide significant stream bank and shoreline stabilization. If we keep going down, preferred practices, preserving the natural stream bank and shoreline. It prevents contaminants or excess nutrients from entering the water. It prevents erosion caused by rain, wind, wave, and ice action. It provides food, shade, and cover for fish and wildlife. If some vegetation must be removed, limit the amount. Try to prune trees and shrubs back instead of removing them altogether. And then when we get down to the discouraged practices, these methods often degrade the quality of aquatic habitat and continue to erosion in other areas. Since newer practices are available and more contractors are familiar with better stabilization practices, the use of hard armoring, using riprap, is discouraged. However, there are severely eroded locations where hard armoring is necessary, and they define severely eroded as 1 feet per year, which is not us. So it talks about the riprap and suggests a stable 1 to 3 slope when at all possible. In many cases, only the toe of the slope may need rock reinforcement. The remainder can be planted with native vegetation. And then it goes on to suggest better ideas. And it has woody plants for soil bioengineering and for stability, which we have many of, such as smooth alder, river birch, black walnut, sweet gum, tulip poplar, and a southern wax myrtle, which we currently have. My concern is this. Seeing the artist rendering of just basically what looks like to me a parking lot for that part of our lake is, I hate it. I hate it so much. Our slogan is Art's Natural Habitat, and we're going to remove that entire stretch of habitat for so much wildlife and biodiversity. I think it is a big mistake, and when we had talked about what we were going to do on that slope, I thought we were going to do some selective removal of certain plants and not just completely making a lawn out of it. So those are my concerns as voiced by the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. I think that it is going to be something that our residents are going to be furious about, just having just blank openness. I know we've heard from some people that think that we should be able to see the lake from all places around the lake. I don't agree with that. I think that a thriving environment is a healthy one, and I cannot vote in favor of this action. Unless you can make me feel real good about it right now.
Okay.
Could
Well,
I just,
let-
could
let-
I
let me-
just ask a question at the beginning of that? What, those recommendations, were those recommendations for a stream or were those for a dam?
It's for the shoreline, so
A stream, the
Well,
shoreline of a stream or
there's
a.
a stream
or
bank
a s-
and shoreline.
Okay,
so
but
it is
not a
both.
dam.
I mean, it's the shoreline of the lake has a shore, so it's the shoreline that we need to keep intact.
Right, but but what we're talking about is a dam, not just the shoreline of the lake. We're talking about, that whole thing is the dam, so I'm not sure that that necessarily
I'm talking about the
applies.
shore of that.
Well,
Which
if I-
is
if I
also
can-
the dam.
If I can offer a liability response to some of this. And some of this is family history that y'all don't care about, but I grew up in a TVA family. My grandfather built dams for the Tennessee Valley Authority. I've been around dam construction most of my life. And I've litigated for like 5 years when I was a baby lawyer, all the dam failures in South Georgia from the tropical storm that parked itself over Albany, Americus, and dumped feet of water on that part of the state.
Thank you.
The wild and uncontrolled growth of vegetation on a dam is structurally incompatible with dam's integrity. The more root burrowing that you have going on in a dam, the less the dam can structurally do its job. So a dam is both legally, from a liability standpoint and from a construction standpoint, fundamentally different than the natural shoreline or stream bed of a waterway. Because you are using man-made materials and man-placed materials to impede the natural flow of a body of water in order to create something else that humans want to be able to use. So whenever you have uncontrolled vegetation, and particularly tree growth on a dam, you lessen the ability of that dam to be structural, maintain its structural integrity, depending on the extent of that growth, by as much as 75%. So I understand your perspective, Councilman, and I'm not trying to talk you out of the aesthetics of your concern. But if we are worried about the integrity of this structure, and we're worried about the liability that that structure's failure would cause to downstream homeowners who we don't even know the identities of yet, because we haven't done the surveys and haven't done the engineering to figure out what happens if we have a catastrophic failure. We're not required to do that, but one of the things that the Public Works Director has recommended to the council is that he wants to be able to do that analysis so we have an understanding of what the exposure is and what we need to do to maintain the integrity of the structure and avoid those kinds of catastrophic failures. The very first thing that I would tell you from my own personal experience and my legal experience that creates a significantly avoidable hazard is allowing vegetation to grow on either face of a dam without control and without restriction.
And let me be clear, I'm not saying that there should be we should just let it do whatever it wants. We can set aside some sort of maintenance, I feel like. Because when we had talked about this earlier, we had talked about removing, every third alder, or like taking an amount of them so that it wouldn't become overrun. I don't think that the question is all or nothing, where we just let nature do whatever it wants, or we just completely put just riprap over everything so that we don't have to worry about it. So I don't think that all or nothing is what I'm talking about here. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like the way that it's going to affect the wildlife. I don't like how it's going to affect the quality of our lake. Those are my concerns.
So I think, for me right now, this seems like a starting place to start a conversation about one is the aesthetics of what it looks like, but also the functionality of what its purpose is. I think, probably myself included, don't think of the lakeside part of the stream of the bank as a dam. I think of the other side more as a dam because it's clearly obvious, but they are both dam. They're both part of the same dam. I'm concerned about, it looks sterile to me in the artist rendering, that's just from an aesthetic perspective. I'm also concerned about if we do have some rainfall like we've had, and I know the far side of the lake on this side was built specifically that when we had floods, it would overflow the road to go into the eastern wetlands as a way to control it. This gives me a little concern looking at the lack of grade here, that it would overflow into the creek pretty easily with just the riprap there. So I think part of the purpose of the alders being there was to contain some of the water as well in case there's heavy rainfall. I just think there's a middle ground with this. I think we have to balance the engineering and the scientific side of it with also the response I think many people would have is like, oh my God, it's bare, which is not how I think of Pine Lake. It's just, just clear cut it all. The downstream, the slope that goes down towards the creek, that to me needs to be we need to make sure that we can see it, we can maintain it, and that we are budgeting for that specific type of maintenance to do that, because that slope is pretty harsh. So I think there's wiggle room on the lake side of how we want that to look within the context of what AECOM's recommending.
I think the spillway portion that you're speaking of for overflow is on the, I guess you would call it the western side of the lake.
Yeah.
That would go into the wetlands, not where we
No,
see,
I've mixed up eastern, western.
not where we see the riprap.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I for one would love to see those alders gone. I think they're a maintenance nightmare. They're a safety issue for walkers in the evening, especially. I don't think there's any reason that we can't plant annuals, something that's not going to be woody and reedy and put deep roots into the dam, something that's up on the surface, or perhaps use, what do you call them? Planters or, wooden planters along the way, that type of thing. Something that won't impact the structure itself, but will add some visual color to it. We still have probably 70% of the lake that will have a natural shoreline, and that's the part of the lake that's not a dam. And I think we need to recognize that the portion of it that's a dam needs to be handled with care and thought about in terms of the maintenance more than anything else, because we're looking at what lack of maintenance costs right now. I mean, we've seen over the past few years the cost of not taking care of that dam. So I think, we need to fix what needs to be fixed, and there are things you can do to make it more visually appealing than the artist rendering. But I like what I see.
Yeah.
Can I just add,
Yeah,
I would, oh,
Mr.
is that,
Kendrick,
I'm sorry.
curious
Are
if
you trying to
there,
talk, Brandy?
you know,
Sorry.
if we were to go the route of taking out the alders for the reasons Councilmember Ramsey spoke of, and also just the ongoing maintenance that they require, and I don't know, maybe it's a combination, or just going with the selective, like the wax myrtles have flat-rooted root structures. I don't think, you could verify this, but I don't think they're at risk of any sort of puncture, especially with like how high that elevation is compared to the rest of the dam wall. Or going with like lower growing perennials and rushes, things that would be easier to maintain with like a seasonal weed whacking potentially. And I don't know that we're at the point where we really need to get to that level of detail. Is that correct, just in terms of the process? In terms of what you need from us tonight, we've got the resolution before us, which is to continue with the dam remediation project. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little foggy just because of not feeling well, but
Well, what here was recommended was, if you recall, we couldn't even do a complete inspection on the upstream side because we were limited because of the alders. And
Right.
that's when it's recommended that the alders are the problem because the root system is undermining or possibly undermining the upstream side, which puts the
Right.
structure in jeopardy. So from that standpoint, we do need the alders have to be removed or should be
Yeah.
removed. I like the idea of what Councilman Ramsey said. We can stabilize the bank so that we won't have a liability from knowing that the alders remain, they're going to, or if they haven't already, undermine the upstream side. Putting some type of shallow rooted type plant that'll be a little bit more decorative, that can be easily maintained, like in the strip of area where you have the grass there. So, I
Right.
mean, I think that could easily, and it'd be low maintenance and those types of things. It'll be visually appealing. It'll probably block out, even the thought of the riprap is there. But that's the main purpose here, is that we're trying to, make sure that the dam integrity is, maintained. We can always do some cosmetic or visual type things to make it look more appealing. The alders are from the height that they are, safety issue. What we're recommending here is that, they should go. Now, if we come up with something, different, I still think we're gonna have to have some type of armament on the upstream side. What the inspection engineer has also, communicated is that once we pull the alders, we might even find where some of the animal burrows, be
Right.
it turtles or whatever, have already undermined, the integrity of the upstream side.
Sorry.
So we still need to remove them to do the thorough inspection that we contracted them to do. Once we, do that, come back with the riprap and then come back with the shallow, rooted plants on the more, the grassed area. I'm okay with eliminating that grassed area, because that's more toward the crown of the dam that doesn't really, I'm not saying have a real, function as far as, holding back, impounding the lake. It's more of a, at that transition area where you get to the walking trail, So I don't think those types of plants, you know, would have any real impact. It's just,
Right.
you know, so I would be fine with saying, let's do that. And that would kind of, you know, soften the impact of those, you know, that riprap there.
Right. So then, in terms of this proposal, could we move forward with this resolution authorizing the contracts, and would that cover just taking out the alders and doing the inspection? Does the council need to decide tonight whether it goes the direction? It sounds like there's the desire to go the direction of vegetation more than riprap on the inside shoreline of the dam there. You know, and sticking with plants like the juncus and the rush that are already naturally occurring, and some, you know, there's a bunch of native plants that are low growing and low maintenance. Does what is presented before us tonight, if we were to accept that, does that prohibit moving forward in that way?
Well, probably delay it until the December meeting, but I don't. I'm still just caught up in the liability issue of. Well, let me put it this way: we still need to, at some point, you know, we've got to complete the dam inspection. We do not know what the impact is to the upstream slope is, simply because those alders are there. We don't know if the roots have, you know, penetrated into the bank, you know, where it is maybe doing some damage. You know, the downstream side, you know, of course, it doesn't seem to be much, you know, debate, you know, regarding that. But, you know, the upstream side is what's going to initially cause the dam failure. You know, if we've got
So then does it make sense to go ahead and remove all of the trees along that, or at least the alders along the upstream side, and do the dam inspection and evaluation, and then make a recommendation as to whether or not we should move forward with riprap or vegetation based on the findings?
we could do that. I mean, it's just timing right now, because what we'd like to do is remove the alders, do the inspection, and then as soon as, if there's some repair work that needs to be done because of penetrations from the alders, that'll have to be taken care of before we do anything. And then you know, we kind of might have a price adjustment here because we got the holidays coming, you know, just like everything else. So this is kind of like a 30-day window from what we're looking at. I mean, we could get started on the downstream side, and then, you know, I don't know. It's kind of hard to answer because, like I'm saying, we still have to complete the upstream inspection, and the only way to complete the upstream inspection is that the alders need to be removed.
And you would need to be prepared to repair any punctures that you find immediately. And
Yeah,
that would be with riprap. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we got to repair it with something if there's something there. I mean,
If there's something.
how soon are we talking about? I mean, because we could kind of push it down a little bit to, I mean, I just don't know if anybody's going to recommend any type of vegetation that's going to stabilize a bank or a dam.
Right.
You know, because that's kind of like the no-no for a dam is to have, you know, this vegetation.
Pardon me, Mayor Hall, you can't see me raising my hand here, but I get the impression from listening to Mr. Kendricks that this is not an either-or decision between riprap and vegetation. This is a riprap plus vegetation if we choose to put some decorative plantings on the horizontal surface of the dam at the top.
Right.
But we do need the structural support of the riprap, no matter what here.
Yeah, that's the goal here is, you know, I'm you know, functionality for me.
Yeah.
You know, we can dress it up after the fact, but, you know, I don't want to put it like, say, it makes no, real purpose to have all these decorative things up there if they're gonna do exactly, what we're
trying to undo right now.
Because, what we talked about before, I was waiting for the cold weather to get here because it didn't make sense to prune them. And then 2 months later, you're still growing season, they're gonna come right back and we're gonna end up, paying double. Whereas we're in the cold season now and it's already been recommended that the alders need to be removed. And, we need to stabilize that upstream bank, coupled with the fact we need to complete the inspection. We can come back and get some additional guidance on how to, pretty up the bank so that, everybody aesthetically, soften the eye away from, what the structural stabilization is.
Right.
So the bottom line is, in order to really do anything with this project, the dam inspection needs to be done.
But that's the goal. See, when we started with looking at the wetlands and those types of things, and the goal was getting more water into the lake. And then when we turned around and basically said we need a dam inspection, then it was almost like, hey, now the dam is the priority. It really is not the wetland. The wetlands are going to take care of itself. But we need to do something to make sure of how much water that we could actually, safely impound in the lake, and also make sure that we're maintaining the dam as a regulated structure going forward, so that we don't have liability issues going forward. So,
So in your process, the way we complete the inspection is you need bare root dirt to be able to inspect for the engineers to come in and look at the dam, then determine if there's any remediation that needs to be done because of the damage done by whatever plants were removed, and then what it's going to look like.
And that's the same thing, but to a more minor degree on the downstream side. We do know we have these large trees, and we just don't know how deep the root system goes into the downstream face. We might be facing some of those same issues there, but the good thing is on the downstream side, the majority of those large trees are in that shelf area, so that shouldn't present as big of a problem as the ones there. But we do know that those alders with their root system are causing or potentially causing.
So what you're addressing is really the liability, the functionality, and making sure we have a dam that's a functional dam.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the other components of this is the education piece, that if we, what needs to be done to inform and educate our residents as to why.
Well, and I can offer this is what we could do is pull in, our contracted arborists, the kind of work with us in softening that issue there. The plantings on the horizontal slope of the crown of the dam, to make it a little bit more palatable than just seeing the rocks there. And as to go back toward the guidance that you saw at EPD, it is a difference between stabilizing a dam versus a stream bank. And because these are the third project I spoke about is the stabilizing the actual creek bank versus this one, which is the upstream portion of this dam is more critical than the toe of the dam because of it's in the creek bank.
I just want to point out that my objection is not just aesthetics, and I think that all of that habitat space, all of that thriving greenery, some forms, it has function beyond just being pretty, so it's not just decoration.
I don't mean to offend.
No, I just wanted to point out that I'm not just talking about them being there because I think it's pretty. I think they've got far more function than that. And so I think that, I don't know why, if we approve this now, do we have any, are we going to take out just the alders first, or are we just going to clear cut it and then put some things back here and there?
It gotta be derooted to tell what the condition of the upstream.
The entire upstream bank has to be completely,
Yes.
even the plants that aren't deep roots.
Well, if we leave them there, they're just gonna grow back through the riprap. You know, and then, you know, might
Which
cause
might not be a
another issue.
terrible thing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the major culprit here is the alders with the roots there, we just don't know what they've done.
Okay.
Great. Any other
Well,
comments?
I just like to say that while you say it's not just for aesthetics, the bottom line is there's a push and pull. We have created a lake by creating a dam. We want to have a lake. We want to have it maintained. And the alternative to riprap is having a natural bank along there. It sounds to me like all the recommendations are that is not conducive to a dam. So, I mean, we've got two different things. Yes, we want habitat for animals and we want the lake, to have that. But if that's gonna cause a problem with the dam, I think, we have to go with what is required for the dam so that we can continue to have the lake. I mean, the lake is number one, I think, not the habitat
Right.
along that side of the lake. I know it'd be nicer if we could have that, but we want to keep the lake.
And the lake is looking fine these days, Mr.
I was
Kendrick.
waiting on you for that. Well, let me put this one in. We're gonna have to draw down the lake a little bit in order to, do what really needs to be done. But I think we got a pretty good handle on how we're gonna do that now. So I don't have any real concerns with that. But there will be a short drawdown period to get water away from the shoreline, and the work needs to be done. And then once we get it back, we can turn it so that the lake will come back up. So I believe we can get that done.
Great. Okay. Thank you for the explanation there. Are we ready to go ahead? Is there a motion to accept Resolution R 2025-66 for the dam remediation project?
I move that we accept Resolution R 2025-66, the dam remediation project.
All right, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I have no idea if that passed or not, but
No, that was two. We're-
okay, great. All right, thank
Looks
you
like
so
a
much, Mr.
decision
Kendrick.
is
time
being
out,
made
uh,
over here.
Mayor,
Well, we didn't hear any no's.
well
We got an aye from council members Bordeaux and Ramsey.
you may have to use your tie break for the first time
Oh,
in a very long time.
Councilmember Woods is absent.
Councilmember Woods is absent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm in favor of the resolution. If I'm allowed to vote.
I think you may need to first call for a complete vote. So call for nays.
Oh, okay, I call for a complete vote for the adoption of Resolution R 2025-66. Is the motion still on the table?
Yes, the motion, Mayor, the motion's still on the table. You've got the aye votes. You need to ask for what any no votes or any abstentions.
Okay, all right, so, sorry, I'm having a hard time following because of brain fog, but I call for a complete vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
All right, great. The motion passes. Thank you. All right, new business, fiscal year 2026 proposed budget. Mr. Hawthorne, first of all, holy wow, a budget has never looked so beautiful, I have to say. Thank you for you and the staff's time in preparing this under extreme circumstances of awaiting the audit results, awaiting the comp and class results, switching finance directors, and all of the things. So with that, please take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for those compliments. I just have a quick message for Mr. Kendrick. It will be the last time that I put him ahead of me with one of his projects. I thought I was the main story today. So I have two objectives today, recognizing that that the council hasn't had a chance to study this document. We sent the electronic file, but that would have been hard reading. And part of the reason is we weren't expecting to present the budget so soon, except for our diligent city attorney pointing out whether this has happened in the past or not, but that the council, by charter, should receive the proposed budget of the city manager at a minimum 45 days in advance. So I think we're on the 49th day, but the effort that it has taken to produce what has been my vision for as long as I've been your city manager, with the timetable moved up, I will tell you for the last 2 weeks or so, staff has gotten some sleep, but probably not much. And as attractive as the document is, it contains decisions that the council will need to make, particularly over time, that probably will be among the toughest that a council has ever had to deal with. So my two objectives tonight, recognizing that we're not expecting deliberations of the council on the budget, that it's not required by up to 45 days, is to introduce a document to you that you've never seen, probably wasn't expecting, and there's a lot of content, but it's also a format that I have used in multiple organizations, and just for your comfort level, I've never given any organization the benefit of receiving it ahead of the meeting. It's kind of the nature of the budget, whether it's the 45 days here or other circumstances in other places. Literally, it's fresh from the printer. So I want to introduce the document to you so that you know what's here, and when you have a chance to go back and review it in your own time, and certainly by the time we get to the first public hearing, December 2nd. And then the second objective is for me to highlight for you the policy recommendations that you will need to consider and deliberate. So it will be at a fairly high level, even though I will go into some depth over the most important policy issues I believe you'll be facing, in my opinion. So if we could start with the document, and I think we've got copies that are available to the public. We will be able to make the document available to any neighbor of Pine Lake that wants it, because we've got an electronic copy of it that we'll certainly be putting on the website in anticipation of the public hearing. But I want you to understand the document itself, and when you get to know it, it's an easy document. I also want to acknowledge, as you see from the cover page, that we highlight Pine Lake in pictures, and we give the appropriate acknowledgments throughout the document. But this is Pine Lake in its natural habitat with many of the pictures, and this cover page represents the 4 seasons in effect of Pine Lake. And the document by the title, Fiscal Year 2026 Budget and Operations Guide, serves a dual purpose, recognizing that we also have a new council coming on board. The first half is dealing with the numbers and policy of the budget itself. The second half of the operations guide, we're not going to get into that tonight, or not even on December 2nd, but it will be for the new council, and that includes all members, but particularly the new members, having an orientation session where departments will come forth and give you an idea of what really goes on behind the scenes, that information that I think is most critical for the governing body and the public to understand. And that's really the essence of the full document itself. If people pay attention to this document, they will know what it is that really is expected of the operations of the city of Pine Lake. If we turn over to
Mr. Hawthorne,
yes,
I'm sorry, could I ask a question of what you I just didn't understand what you
yes,
just,
and you can certainly interrupt me throughout.
you said there was going to be a session with the incoming council members and this council with the new, would that be with the new finance manager?
No. So over the course of now, and the finance director, the only reason why he's not here is because he came down sick, and but he certainly has been a big part of this work that we've done, particularly on the numbers. But this council, as you're expected to do, you will have to approve the budget. And you will need to do that at some point in December. Right now it's tentatively scheduled for December 9th. So that's dealing with the budget. When the new council is in place with the new members, certainly in January, I'm hoping for an orientation session where we will give an overview of the budget, but importantly, the operations guide portion of this document that basically tells the new council members what this is all about, from the charter to what the city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and the various departments, what their roles are.
Okay, so I'd like to request that we have that the current council have some sort of session with the new finance manager who has put this together. There are questions in here that are very important to be answered. I mean, I could give you those questions and have him come back with the answers for them, or give you the questions that I have, but this truly is, I mean, people need to understand this, and I think that he's the person to do that. So is it possible that he attend, now what are our next meetings are the 2nd and the 9th?
December
Is that the
2nd.
9th?
December 2nd is your next meeting.
I
which
thought
is-
the
which
12th
is-
was when we
which is,
would,
which is also a public hearing. Today, of course, is November 12th, when the budget is presented to you by the city manager.
okay, so the 2nd and the 9th are the next 2 meetings.
Yes,
And both of those are only, well, it doesn't matter, but they're hearings for the public.
yes, and will
So-
be budget intensive from kind of a deliberations up standpoint.
Okay, so is it possible for the finance manager to be available to us on the 2nd?
Well,
Or the 9th?
the way that the contract is structured for the new finance contractor and Mr. Salvatore is that he will be attending meetings as the norm. The contract specifically says only when he is not needed or the city manager has released him from a meeting. So going forward, having the finance person here is a given. So only
Okay.
because he's sick. Is he not
Okay.
here tonight?
Okay, so that'll be
Yeah.
going
And,
forward.
and certainly, and you all know, I have tried to emphasize, and, you know, you will never find me being violative of the charter. But I don't like being a messenger with the experts, you know, who
Oh,
can
yeah.
speak to things. So you all have the ability, and I'm gonna cover that at a high level tonight, particularly for the new council, in January. I've got it in this document. You all reaching out and talking to experts with your questions. City managers are generalists. So I welcome you all, and, you know, and I think it has worked over this last year.
Okay, that's great that he'll be
Yes.
attending meetings.
He intended
Good.
to be here tonight as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
but he's been critical. We couldn't have accomplished what you've got without him.
Gene, I like your idea of getting together questions to have him so that he's prepared to answer them when he gets here on the 2nd. So I would like for all of us to work on that.
Just email the questions or?
Yes, it's no problem. And in between, you don't have to wait until the 2nd to start with those questions.
Okay.
So email them to you?
To you.
Well, as we typically do, I like to be copied, but, you know, these people all report ultimately to the governing body.
Does he have an email yet?
Yes, it's just his name, typical Paul Salvatore at pinelakega.net.
Could
And-
we,
and he's on some of the emails already that
Okay.
you
could
did.
we perhaps maybe do a, within our governing authority email group,
Yes.
just put our questions together so we can present it to him in a consolidated manner and
Yes,
instead of piecemeal? Yeah,
absolutely.
so let's do that.
Let's do that.
So just send it to the governing body one?
Our governing authority 2025,
Mhm.
which has all of us and city managers copied,
Yeah.
Ned's copied.
We'll
that
chat so that we can
everybody's aware.
send
Yeah.
one
so-
document instead of 6.
So then, when we get all our thoughts together on that over the next week or so, we can forward one email to the finance director that's got a group of questions.
So I agree.
I'd like to see the document that gets forwarded.
Of course.
I mean, beforehand, so that we know. Sometimes things get lost in translation, so,
Okay.
my thought.
And as I'm reading Councilmember Ramsey, I think he's just saying, as you generate questions, be inclusive using the governing authority.
Well, I think he's asking you to put them together as one document before they're presented to Mr. Salvatore,
We'll put it together. We will.
right?
We will. Council and the mayor will put all of our questions together. Then we can send those to Mr. Hawthorne as one thing instead of 6 different things for him to deal with.
Or
We're gonna
send
get-
it to the finance director with a copy to Mr. Hawthorne.
Right.
How
The thing
about
is,
we-
we're going to get ourselves together first.
Yeah,
Send one
that's what I was
thing that
suggesting.
we've agreed on.
Okay, I prefer not to do that. I want Mr. Salvatore to see my questions. I don't want them combined in, put into a separate thing. So, I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine, but I would rather not do that. I would send my questions to governing body, so you all see them, and Stanley sees them, and the finance manager sees them. But I would like my questions to be my questions, not combined into something that's the whole council.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's,
Okay, thank you.
okay, so on the acknowledgements page is exactly that, recognizing the contributors and certainly the mayor and council. The table of contents, and this is what I want to walk you through each of these major sections, starting with, and I hope you've been able to understand that the number of the page is in the circle, which is also the divider page for that particular section, except for these first 2 parts. But if you'll turn over to the table of organization, this is something that's actually required by charter and code. We have a departmental structure now that I'll be more specific to later in the report that is well outdated. So it's important what this table of organization captures. This is my recommendation to the city council. You will indirectly be approving it as a part of the budget in terms of the numbers, but it is going to be necessary for us to come back and amend the current code of ordinances, this particular chapter. And most of this is a given as prescribed by the charter. For those first 3 lines, obviously, Pine Lake Neighbors and their roles as the electorate group and their chosen body, elected body, the city council. Charter prescribed that next line, city clerk, city manager, city attorney, and also the charter addresses the departments, but leaves it to the council of what that specific structure and what functions are covered as desired by the governing body and the community.
And Mr. Hawthorne, I would love to have an amendment to that to include our contractors.
What do you mean by contractors?
Our code enforcement, our contractor permitting, our arborist, all of the folks who are contracted to do work for us. That I've actually asked for that a year ago, to see who all the players are who are providing services.
Yeah. So take note, under the departments, we have also captured, you can call them divisions, or you can call them the functions of each department. And so this document is progressive, and I realize that probably for the first time, all of the various contractors are spelled out within this document. For instance, when we get to the line items. So I don't know, Councilmember Goldberg, if that's a place for the table of organization other than from a functional standpoint, but this document does capture all of those contractors. And I will say that there has been inconsistency in Pine Lake. You have some contractors who never come before the council for presentation, contract renewal. We may not even have contracts in place. So again, the substance of this document, if you give it a chance, and for me to get through the presentation, we're going to be tackling all of that stuff.
Mr. Hawthorne,
Yes.
The city clerk and the city attorney are approved by the council, I guess hired by the council. But does the city clerk not report to you?
No, the city clerk reports to the city council by charter.
On a day-to-day basis?
Well, right now, technically, you only have an acting city clerk, and before you did an acting city clerk, you had an assistant city clerk. That assistant city clerk reported directly to the manager, because the de facto city clerk, before you named the acting city clerk, was the city manager.
Right. I understand that, but if you say that the city clerk reports to the city council, is that not saying then that we have the ability to tell the city clerk what to do on a, I mean,
I would say for city clerk duties, I don't know if you've paid attention to a box just to the left of that city clerk that says general government, and you'll also see Mr. Dagenhart's name. So, and this gets back to the issue of you've got a small workforce and they wear a lot of hats. And before I ever got here, Mr. Dagenhart was fulfilling
Multiple roles.
largely some of the clerk duties as the assistant city clerk. But then there's a whole lot of other stuff that's purely administrative. So ultimately, in my recommendation, and the classification study will support this as well, I'm going to be suggesting that he not only have a dual title, but that he has a dual reporting structure for those things that are not strictly city clerk, such as those listed under general government. He will report to the city manager.
So his role reports to city council. His other roles do not.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That's clarifying.
And,
Thank you.
And all of this will become more clear. There's a method to all of the madness that's here. Starting on page 2 is the city manager's budget message. And I want to come back, that's going to be the most of my presentation. I haven't given most of my presentation so far because I've had questions, so.
Sorry.
So my presentation hasn't officially started. But I'm going to come back to this 10-page or whatever number of pages it is, budget message, and that's where I want to highlight the top policies that I'm recommending from a budgetary standpoint. So if you will allow me to get through the rest of the document, just introducing the various parts. If you will turn over from the budget message to page 12, and on page 12, and let me say also, for as nice as this document and with narrative and all of that may be, this is an abbreviated document this year. This is probably only half the size of the substance of what is required in a budget. But I know you all understand that we're making progress a little bit at the time. So this next section with the divider pages, general fund revenues, and if you turn over to page 13, this section has 2 parts. And this first part captures the numbers. Here you get to see, and I'd like to say a more appealing spreadsheet, the various revenue sources of the city. We talk about the property tax a lot because it's the major, but there are many more revenue categories with potential or not of helping to balance the budget now and in the future. And for each of these revenue sources, the data is presented in 3 columns. We're behind an audit, so I wish I could say this column is actual audited 2024. It certainly is actual, but it's only estimated at this point as opposed to being audited. Audit is still in progress, but I think these are good, reliable numbers. And I will tell you all of these numbers come from the finance director. He's had to do some quick and hard work getting into systems. The next column is the amended 2025. So you had the original budget, and then in April, and then maybe a couple of sessions, you have amended the budget for this year. So that's that middle column. And then the third is the proposed budget from the city manager, 2026. And the last 2 columns shows a comparison between the amended budget and the proposed budget, with the dollar change and the percent change. And so over pages 13, 14, and 15, that's just presenting all of the revenues in a table format, the comprehensive general fund. And the bottom line, because this has to be balanced, on page 15, you see all of these revenue sources put together for what is the total general fund revenue, starting with estimated 2024, 1.372 million, amended 2025, 1.565 million, and proposed 2026, 1.624. And that represents a 3.7% change comparing proposed to amended. On page 16, takes those revenue sources from the table, at least all of the major ones, and it gives some background and even some hint at why these various categories have changed. So this is an educational piece of this document, so that if Mr. Salvatore isn't before you, or the city manager isn't before you, or a department director isn't before you, that we're giving you some good sound background on what each of these sources are. And those same columns that introduces each of these categories, estimated 2024, amended 2025, and proposed 2026. And again, this is on the individual line item basis for the major sources. So under
Quick question.
yes,
Under intergovernmental revenues, I do not see the large intergovernmental agreement monies that we received in 2025.
yes, and that would be because this is general fund.
But I don't see any other funds here.
They're not in here.
Yes,
They're just
and
not included.
So keep in mind what I said to you at the early part. This is an abbreviated budget where the focus is on the general fund.
Okay. Will we see the whole budget in December?
No.
When we bring back the resolution for you to approve,
Uh-huh.
it will be comprehensive. So, yes, to answer your question, but all of those parts are not within this document.
Okay. The reason I ask is because that is a very significant amount of money. We've spent a good portion this year. Certainly not the majority of it yet, but I would say it's tied to almost every capital project that's come to the table this year and is on the table for the next few years. So I think it's really important that not only us, but our residents see how that money is being handled.
Yes, and I will come back to those sources when I get to my budget message, and I do have sections that deal with those major capital
Okay,
numbers.
good.
So what I should have said is a lot of those other things you won't see in this
Not in this
comprehensive
document.
format. Yes,
Okay.
yes. All right, so the revenue narratives go through page 19, and then we start again on page 20 with general fund expenditures. So page 20, the divider page, and then you have two parts. Again, the table that starts on page 21, dealing with expenditures. And this breaks it down by the major appropriation centers. I could say departments, but it's more accurate to say appropriation centers. Starting with general government, formerly known as administration, on page 21. And then these are all of the line items that support the general government resources. On page 23, and you see at the middle of the page, total general government ends, and that's a significant part of the budget. And then you see the municipal court starts after total general government. And the same thing, all of the various line items are broken up. At the end of page 24, you see total municipal court. page 25 starts with public safety. Again, all of the line items. And just as an aside, Pine Lake's budget, even though they've had appropriation centers, such as I'm going over, has been centralized. Your department directors, I'll describe it as, and I don't want to overstate because I wasn't here, but you know, I've been here and I've been assessing. Your departments, and I fundamentally disagree with this, haven't really had the ability to develop or manage their budgets as they should. So that is something that is changing, but it doesn't change with this document. They're seeing this just as you are. So at this point in time, we're still continuing on with how it has been, and that's just, you know, we ran out of time. So this is finance director taking the best information, and then the city manager reviewing and making adjustments as I think needs to fit the proposed budget for this year. Public Works starts on page 26 at the very bottom. And again, the various line items. There is an appropriation center at the bottom of page 28, recreation. And then that concludes the appropriation centers as they currently exist. And you get to total general fund expenditures on page 29. And what I want to most bring to your attention with all of this detail, as you look at proposed 2026, maybe this number is familiar to you, 1624054, that matches the revenue budget. But everything in between to get that balance is where difficult policy decisions will lie with you, and I would say most extensively the new city council. On page 30, now looking at all of these expenses that you just looked at are in the narratives. But what I need to explain to you is these aren't broken down by each of those appropriation centers such as public safety or general government. This is taking a roll-up of all of the, using as an example, salaries and wages, regular employees. So for each of those departments, this gives you the total for the general fund. But in the end, it all adds up to the 1624 that I just read to you as far as the proposed budget. So as of this proposed budget, the budget is balanced, but that can also be deceiving. How is it balanced? And that's what we're going to need to get into the details of. But I'm coming back on my budget message to give you a high level what you need to be looking out for in this detail. And as you look at the line item narratives, you will get a good feel of what exactly those pieces are that that cause different line items to be increased, but ultimately how the two fit together, revenues and expenditures, and how it's balanced. So the expenditure narratives go over until page 40. And then we get to the operations guide of the document. And normally what this section would be each of the departments, more numbers. But with the new council, I just saw the opportunity to not give you numbers for the departments because you've seen those in the table, but to give an education of what each department does. My focus on this section, what I'm recommending, will certainly answer any questions, but the focus of this council on the budget really ends on page 39. And on page 40, it is education, it's orientation for the new council, where each department use kind of whatever approach they want it to give kind of a individual assessment of what it is that their departments do. I call it the operations guide, but I also call it the strategic performance report special edition. And this will serve for some study over the next few weeks and into January, where departments will come in and hopefully sit down with the new council and go into some depth over what are in these pages. The first 10 or so pages of the operations guide is at a higher level than departments. These are sections that I have written and that will probably be familiar to you because I've addressed these issues pretty early on as I introduce strategic performance reports. And so as I highlight these sections on 42 as an example, organizational structure. I mean, this really starts with the structure of the city government, going to the charter. The reason that we exist is because of what the charter says should be the organizational structure at a high level. On page 43 as a specific example of where the charter allows the city council to make a determination specific to the organization, you will see that the Pine Lakes Code of Ordinances currently governs the establishment of departments as follows. And then it lists the departments in the particular section of the code. So this is what I was citing earlier, that it is certainly different than what I've recommended, but it is outdated even from the standpoint of the charter. So with the city attorney, we will be coming back sometime in the new year, in that table of organization that I presented, making a recommendation of what should be the new official structure of the administrative departments. On page 44, give you an example of information being outdated. At the top of the page in subparagraph B, and this is of section 2185, departments establish, all departments shall be under the administrative direction of the mayor. The mayor shall be assisted by a director of administration, so forth and so on. That's what's in our current code. We've got a charter that certainly supersedes that, but the code, for it to be of any value, we need to get these sections updated to where the new council sees that it should be. Role of the city manager, again, keep in mind, new council, these are things that I know will be important for them to have a central reference source. Page 46, I introduced the community building team. On page 47, communications between council and staff, we kind of depended on that earlier in the meeting. A big issue on page 48, position classification and pay plans. Currently, we don't have one. It's required by the city charter. This council, in your wisdom, saw that we needed to move forward with that. We are close. You have got a busy final few sessions. December 2nd, the study should be ready. They are close. They've given me a preview of what's to come. It is going to complicate your world. It's going to complicate this budget. but it is required by the charter. We haven't had it. The picture that it's going to paint is not going to be a positive one. On page 50, and I'm not going to go into this, but educating the new council on the importance of financial review, things that you haven't had the benefit of, that I haven't had the benefit of, such as receiving regular financial reports, even though we've got a new financial system that Mr. Salvatore now has the keys, but not fully. There are still some doors that haven't been opened. Things that we invested in, that we are paying for, but I will tell you, I didn't know, or staff didn't know even existed, such as the purchasing module that will bring, I think, better integrity to our financial processes. And I think the number that Mr. Salvatore told me that we're paying for it annually, I think was around $10,000, but we haven't started to use it. So there's a lot that's coming your way for those of you who are remaining, and those of you who are leaving, you're going to be missing out on the fun of a lot of stuff. On page 52 is where we get into each department having put forth a great effort to present what it is that they do, and priorities and so forth, and that will be in that orientation session. So I'm not going to go through each of these, but you've got general government. Again, that's a new name for you, but it's a common name in local government, capturing all of those miscellaneous things. And I will assure you that Mr. Degenhardt has been wearing those hats, even if superficially, for a number of those things. Public Works, Public Safety on page 76. Public Works begins on page 62. The Municipal Court, everything that you wanted to know about the Municipal Court, Ms. Capers has put together a comprehensive. I'm probably going to be recommending a different type of orientation, maybe something that even takes advantage of attending a court session. And then finance. And finance as an example, again, I use purchasing as an example, which technically falls to the city clerk by the code. But you know, one of the line items that has just baffled me, and I hadn't figured it out, is, you know, we've got a pretty healthy fund balance, but we have no dividends or interest proceeds to speak of. And that's an area that I was more aggressive than Mr. Salvatore wanted me to be, so I adjusted the number. But we should be investing funds and making some money. So there's a lot of work to be done. Now with that, that's the document. There's a lot to this document. And in my tradition of presenting a budget, every page is important. It has substance. And each page I usually review, if we were doing this in the way that I normally do, with workshops and departments coming in making presentations, where we literally go through every page of the document. No PowerPoints and those kind of things, but really making sure that the governing body understands where these operations are coming from and what we need to meet your ultimate goals. And we're going to get there. Maybe not all this year, but it's all coming. Now, I want to go back to the budget message, and I want to hit on some high-level policy issues that you will be addressing from my recommendations. But I want to start in a formal way and address you as the mayor and council. And you see on page 2 of the document, I address each of you as the current city council. And for these first couple of paragraphs, I'm going to read because I want the public to know what I'm saying to you. But I am pleased to present a proposed annual operating budget for the city of Pine Lake as prescribed in section 624 of the city charter. As stated, not later than 45 days prior to the beginning of each fiscal year, in our case, January 1, the city manager shall submit to the mayor and city council a proposed operating budget for the ensuing fiscal year. The budget shall be accompanied by a message from the city manager, I'm reading it, containing a statement of the general fiscal policies of the city, the important features of the budget, explanations of major changes recommended for the next fiscal year, a general summary of the budget, and such other comments and information as the city manager may deem pertinent. I think this document largely does that, but I want to commend the authors of this city charter. We've got a pretty good city charter of this new charter. I know there's some things to be worked out, but everyone involved did a good job as far as local governments go and what a city charter should spell out. Now, in the next paragraph I say, and I have been saying this consistently for many years, whatever organization that I have worked, I believe that preparation and adoption of the budget is the single most impactful process that we undertake each year. It is comprehensive of all that the city seeks to do on behalf of the community, and it affects every neighbor in some way. Our eternal mission is to build community, and each year with the monetary resources that neighbors entrust to its elected representatives, not to just exist, but to build better community. That's our mission, to build community, better community. The proposed expenditures for the city of Pine Lake proposed are $1,254,054, a 3.4% increase above the amended budget for fiscal year 2025. The budget is balanced by a combination of sources consisting of tax revenue, $1.1 million. That's a 6.9% increase. The basis of that increase, Mr. Salvatore prepared it. It does not increase the millage rate, but it is based on formulaic work in anticipation of our property tax millage and valuations that get us to that 6.9% increase. He will be better able to explain that. He's got the worksheets. So that's a pretty sound number of what we expect from tax revenue, primarily the property tax. Non-tax revenue is $213,000. That's a 16.6% increase. And again, all of that detail that I just went over with you between the tables and the narratives is explained because we've got dozens of revenue sources. And each of those sources is subject to, even though the city manager proposes it, the council has the final say. The property tax millage rate is proposed at 19.4. The the same millage rate as the city council approved for the fiscal year 2025 budget, and I believe 2024 as well. But it is subject to adjustment next spring and summer after required public tax hearings. We have talked about the fiscal year, just as an aside, and I've never worked in an organization where the fiscal year was the calendar year. And you have the ability to change the fiscal year through an ordinance amendment. But before we have that discussion, and I've discussed this with Mr. Salvatore, we're going to present what we believe are the advantages and disadvantages, the pros and the cons of a calendar year fiscal year versus another, such as October 1 or July 1. One of the advantages that I consider is, even though you're approving a budget now, the millage that will affect this budget is the one that's coming in the spring of 2026. So you actually have the benefit of hindsight in ultimately setting the millage that drives this budget. So that's just an aside. That's one of the advantages, I say, of the current fiscal year. On page 3,
Mr. Arthur?
yes.
Just one quick question, if I might, on the budget is balanced by a combination of sources. You mentioned the tax revenue, you mentioned the non-tax revenue. Could you expound a little bit on the unassigned balance?
Yes, and I just skipped over that. I didn't mean to. I've got a section in the budget message that addresses the fund balance. I will tell you, and I don't say this to be misleading, but the fact of the matter is, Pine Lake has probably one of the healthiest fund balances that I've ever seen for an organization. National standard, and even if you get into bond ratings, the national standard by the Government Finance Officers Association is 2 months of revenue. If you want a higher bond rating, such as AAA, Moody's, Standard & Poor's will say 35%.
Okay.
You're kind of, that's what they look for. We're behind on our audit, and that's a big issue. But for the most recently completed audit, we're at mid-50s%. The preliminary analysis by the finance director on estimated 2024, how we ended the year, and I know the mayor, I've had this conversation with her, she was pretty concerned how we were going to end the year. His preliminary estimate is that we didn't subtract from the fund balance, but that it grew by about $30,000. So that puts the estimated fund balance before we receive the actual audit at around 60%. When you look at all governmental funds, of which the general fund is only one, stormwater would be another one as an example, the fund balance is actually, I think, around 1.45 million, slightly higher than your budget. About half of that is restricted for different things, all spelled out in the audit. So the unassigned represents full ability for the council to leave as is, continue to grow it, or to use some portion of it. Pine Lake's history, as I understand it, even though you have used fund balance, some portion of this uncollected, to balance, historically, you've rarely actually used it. So a budget balancer, but it's never really hit the fund balance.
This is a pretty significant,
This is a significant number.
this is a significant number.
Yes, it is.
And if we continue at that pace,
It's unsustainable.
It'll
it's
be
not
gone.
sustainable.
Absolutely,
I just want to make sure you're aware of
absolutely.
the same thing I see.
In
Yeah,
fact, if you're going to use fund balance, it should be for non-recurring
Yeah.
sources. And, you know, in any given budget, you've got some things that are non-recurring. But as we get into the depth of this, a big portion of this is for recurring.
Okay,
issues.
but you know, we lack many of the revenue channels that are available to cities with larger commercial
Yes,
properties and assets.
yes.
That's probably one of the reasons why previous councils have been conservative on
conservative.
maintenance of that
Rightly so.
balance. I just want to make sure that we're not gonna start a trend of
Yeah,
using 20% or more of our fund balance to balance
yes, absolutely.
an unsustainable budget. Okay.
absolutely.
I just need to say that you're giving a historical analysis of what we've done in the past, but last year was nothing like historical. The reason why we are coming out with somewhat of a positive to our surplus or to our fund balance is because we had ARPA funds. That's one of the questions I have, because I don't see those in here, but it also shows 255,000 transferred from SPLOST. Those are huge numbers that those were used to balance our budget in 2025. That's why we didn't go in the hole. When we have $300,000 going against our fund balance in a year, and we need that just to take care of our expenses, that gives you one more year, and it's going to be gone. So I'm sorry, but I think you're painting a much rosier picture than is really
Well,
here.
I take exception to that.
You can, but
I'm not painting anything rosy. I've only presented the numbers. Your comment on ARPA, all of that detail is here. Mayor Pro Tempore, I qualified when I started that I don't want anyone to be deceived by the attractiveness of the document or even that the budget is balanced. And I even said that this council and future councils will be faced with some of the most difficult decisions. So I understand that you're concerned and you want to emphasize certain things. But I am an experienced city manager, and I probably have never worked in a community where there weren't significant challenges to balance the budget. And there's no organization that I have managed or worked in that I wasn't responsible for the budget. The city of Fort Lauderdale, talking about fund balance, when I got there, with finance, budget being my responsibilities, city of Fort Lauderdale, major tourist attraction, had no fund balance, zero. And yes, we had to turn that around, and we did. So please, don't underestimate my understanding of the challenges ahead. But there's also coins have two sides. And yes, fund balance is a big issue and the need to protect it. But on the other side, there are some things going on in Pine Lake that I hate to put it this way, that we've gotten away with. That have to be addressed. And I'm talking about classification and compensation. The most of the fund balance that is recommended and I'm not trying to say that I'm recommending fund balance for recurring things. But what I am saying is Pine Lake has got to come to terms with classification and compensation for its employees as specified in the city charter. And I will tell you, the city charter, you don't even have any policy that says what fund balance should be, something that's recommended by GFOA. In the meantime, the facts of the matter is, you've got a good fund balance. I'm not suggesting to use it, but then on the other side, you have got some significant issues with compensation and classification. And that's coming on December 2nd. And it's going to be some tough information for us to receive, of which the bottom line is, as your city manager, it's got to be addressed in one fashion or another.
So, a question for you. There is nothing in this budget that addresses that currently. Is that correct? In other words, you don't have the study yet. There's nothing, I'm assuming, increases in salaries.
No, it's addressed in the budget. It's addressed in my proposed budget.
It's addressed in this budget?
Yes. Included in those
The
numbers.
increase was only 2.8%, wasn't
But
it,
also
in
the
salaries?
125,000 that was allocated for this, we looked at that being the amount that might possibly be.
So where does that show up in this budget?
In the tables that I presented, also in the budget message, also in the various narratives. I'm getting to it.
But in the
I'm-
numbers, I'm
I'm-
asking, is it in the numbers?
It's in the numbers. It's in the numbers.
It is.
And if you're not understanding what Councilmember Ramsey just said, in your amended budget this year, you approved $125,000 to address issues that we anticipated for classification and compensation. Obviously, we haven't received the study, and therefore we haven't implemented it. But it was in the amended budget. And so for the proposed budget, it continues that number, 125,000.
Plus the,
But this-
plus the 2.8% COLA. Is that correct?
Yes.
But there was no budget amendment made in the numbers in 2025. Yes, we did, we made we approved it, but those numbers are not,
Yeah, they're in 2025.
okay.
It's part of the amended budget.
Okay, well, these are
We didn't
questions.
spend
These are
it.
questions.
We didn't spend it, Gene, but we budgeted that amount. We added that amount into the budget.
Well, I'm saying that there was not a budget amendment done in the system,
Yeah.
because there was only one budget amendment. So, I'll need to find where that is.
Okay.
If it's in there, that's fine.
So on page 3 of the budget message, and this is mine getting into the topical issues, some of which you've already started to ask about. But personal services, think employee salaries. Personal service line items consist of regular and part-time employees, their salaries, overtime compensation, and employee benefits such as health insurance premiums, Social Security contributions, and retirement benefits. Historically, these costs have constituted a majority of the city's general fund budget. In fiscal year 2024, 56% of the operating budget was for those personnel-related costs. For fiscal year 2025, they made up 55% of the operating budget. One of the things that, on a regular basis, Councilmember Goldberg has asked for, and that I've tried to incorporate into the document, you'll see a number of instances where I give you benchmark analysis. So those percentages that I just gave you, if you look at on page 3, halfway the page, pay attention to the benchmark analysis. And to summarize here, while there's no single percentage for all municipal governments in Georgia, personnel costs, salaries, and benefits typically represent a significant portion of local government general fund budgets, often ranging from 50% to 80%. So 56% for the city, we're actually on the low end. Now, going back up, I want to make this point because it captures some things of why that fund balance comes in to play. For fiscal year 2026, the proposed budget factors for increases associated with the classification and compensation study, budgeted for $125,000 per the amended 2025 budget. We're repeating that, Mayor Pro Tempore. A cost of living adjustment of 2.8%. These are all my recommendations. An increase in health insurance premiums of 4%. You've already approved that. You'll recall back in the end of September for the year that started October 1. And compensation plus related other costs for staffing, which I need to get into some specifics. For the first Public Works Director that you hired, and this underscores some of the decisions that this council has already made. And, you know, this is all public information. With your Public Works Director, I offered him a salary of $75,000. You ultimately approved it, and he accepted it. But that was a net added cost of $25,000 in salary over his previous contracted public works supervisor position. Similarly, for the city manager, the net added cost of salary for city manager was $16,000 above the budgeted level. My salary being $110,000. So the second benchmark analysis that I provide you on page 4 deals with the 2.8% COLA that I'm recommending. Last year you got comfortable with giving your staff a cost of living adjustment that mirrored the Social Security cost of living. And so that's my recommendation. And if you look at the benchmark analysis, what is being given to Social Security retirees is a 2.8% increase. And I give you some history here of those Social Security increases. The next benchmark analysis that I give you is on health insurance. Annual health insurance premiums are seeing significant increases in 2025. and are projected to rise even more in 2026, driven by the series of things that I describe here: rising healthcare costs, prescription drugs, and so forth. If you turn over to page 25, the average premium for employer-sponsored family coverage, which is what we provide except for single coverage, rates rose by 67% this year. For 2026, it ranges from 6.5% to 9%. What I have recommended in this budget is what you previously approved, 4%. So again, it's under what the national standards are showing. And I say some of this to emphasize that you will find nothing in this budget that's extraordinary. It's reasonable in terms of comparability and what's happening in these different industries, which is only going to make your decision more difficult. Not unreasonable things being recommended, but things in line with benchmark analyses to support it. Now, the next benchmark analysis that I give you, and one of the reasons that I give this particular example, your decision to bring on a public works director for the first time in Pine Lake, all in your goal of, I believe, professionalizing the organization and meeting some of the deep-seated issues that Pine Lake hasn't addressed as they need it to be. And so adjustments for that salary are built into this amended 2025 budget. Well, I misstated that. Was not factored in to the 2025 budget. And so that needs to be built in. So that's part of that increase that needs to be absorbed if we're going to stay on the current track. But this particular benchmark analysis that I think you'll find interesting, annual salary for a city public works director in the Atlanta metropolitan area can vary, but it typically falls between approximately $107,500 and $188,500, with the average being around $135,000. And I've told you before, that's my experience. While I was negotiating with, and I've told you all, Mr. Kendrick, I don't want to get personal, but Mr. Kendrick is one of the strongest public works directors that I've ever worked with, counting a lot of stuff: his knowledge, his ability, his care. And you know, I was thinking about this earlier, and he falls into this category, but others of your employees do as well. They don't like spending Pine Lake money. They're frugal. The discussions that I have with Mr. Kendrick, and they include things such as, I wouldn't even bring to this council this cost that was recommended by the city engineer, Ecom. It's the caliber of staff that you have, and I've told you all, I haven't figured out to this day, for as good as they are, this really is a mighty staff, but they're loyal, but they're not paid market pay, but they're still loyal. But at some point, we've got to reach some minimum standard of fairness, and it has huge implications for Pine Lake and Pine Lake's affordability. So these are deep questions, not going to all be answered in this budget, but that we've got to come to terms with. So yes, Mayor Pro Tempore, I'm very concerned about the fund balance, as healthy as it is, with things ahead. But then on the other side, we have got to bring some things up to that same level of concern that only a governing body can come up with the answers, because you've also got to satisfy your constituents who are overburdened from a tax standpoint. I get it all. Tough decisions. This is not an easy budget. But this is the information that I hope you will pay attention to in these next several weeks that prime you for the discussion. Now to hit some other areas, bonded debt service, contracted services is broken down in those various tables with explanations, and this gets to a point that was made earlier, I think, by Councilmember Goldberg. What's there? Who all are we paying? If you go back to the table of organization and the department directors and all that they oversee, they have a lot of partners. But we haven't done a proper job of making you aware who all of those partners are. And, you know, if they've gone through a fair and recurring procurement process. And so all of that needs to be revealed. There will be something that you see when you get to that contracted services expenditure narratives. In multiple cases, I tell you who the firms are, what we're spending, but then I also say this contractor or this contract or lack of contract is subject to future review. So there's a lot here, every page, trust me. Unbonded debt service on page 6, we have 2 outstanding debts. In that first paragraph, those 2 figures, and this is over $100,000, you know, approaching 10% of our general fund budget. $77,230, which I believe this debt will be paid off in a couple of years. 2028, I believe, is the year. But this was debt that was not even assumed originally by the local government. It was the Downtown Development Authority. Normally, downtown development authorities are independent, but there was an agreement reached with the city to pay off the debt, even as the DDA went inactive. But the original debt was $1,023,000. And then the only other debt that the city has is for a leaf machine where principal and interest are covered, $28,000 for the principal for next year and $5,000 in interest. And that's for public works operations. At the bottom of page 6, I go into what I have already stated, reciting under general fund balance, but this is one of the more critical policies that you've got to address. And yes, it's the facts of what currently exists. 1.4 million, of which 686,000 is restricted for capital projects, and an unassigned fund balance audited of $660,646. You turn over to page 7. I point out that based on the finance director's preliminary estimate, fiscal year 2024 adds to it by almost $30,000, $29,312. So without 2025 factored in, but that will be an audit that continues immediately after 2024 is presented. And unfortunately, I have to say that I believe that based on the latest update that I got from our current auditors, they're still reaching out for additional information that they need to conclude their audit for this year. But they have been in the loop on these numbers that the finance director has estimated. I give another benchmark analysis of general fund balance that I'm not going to read it because I've already recited it. In that first paragraph dealing with the GFOA and the 16.67%, that is the recommended standard. And then the very last paragraph on that page where I recited some of the bond rating agencies and what their expectation is in awarding certain ratings for outstanding debt. Budget modifications are a process that I introduced to you this year. You can read that at your pleasure. It's just a review. It's an effective tool that we should be using now and in the future. There are no new budget modifications that are recommended. Community investment plan, this goes back to a question earlier asked by Councilmember Ramsey. I give you a recap of what was approved in the CIP for 2025. At this point, there are no new projects let me take that back. While I'm not presenting a comprehensive new set of projects, there are some priority projects that I'm recommending to go along with these projects that are still in motion. As you know, CIP projects can flow from year to year. So on page 8, and then turning over to page 9, it does recap the capital budgets for 2025 for these major other funds. It does list the projects and what the council approved. At the bottom of page 9, these are the prioritized capital new projects that you have not approved, but that I'm recommending for 2026. They include the beach house renovation, estimated at $90,000. The wetland strategy finalization, $65,000. Playground equipment upgrade, $35,000, with the expectation that we will be able to apply and we believe receive matching funds for taking care of that project. Wayfinding signage of $50,000, and then of course the green space master plan, which you've got a continuing process that's ongoing, including a town hall meeting scheduled for December 16th. So those are to be projects that will be amended in terms of 2026 related to green space. And then the final part that I want to cover is the thank you itself, and it's succinct and broad, but to the point. I wish to thank the neighbors of Pine Lake for accepting me into the special family of Pine Lake, to express my heartfelt appreciation to the mayor and city council for trusting me to execute the policies that you set, and applaud the mightiest team of employees, as small as we may be, of whom I've ever had the pleasure to work with side by side in the trenches. And just to remind you of something that I've said consistently, the job of a city manager isn't easy. It has to be balanced, and it particularly has to be balanced with what I consider to be the constituencies that I serve, starting with the neighbors of the community. It's the reason that we exist. The governing body that constituency of neighbors has elected and are my bosses and give me direction, to whom I make recommendations as required by the city charter. And then the third, and not lesser than any of those, are the employees of the organization, particularly when they're delivering. And I'm going to save any future comments, even though you've started to see some of my emotion on this issue. But I'm going to let the science speak for itself, that you approved. Science is coming. of if employees are being adequately taken care of based on what we require them to do. So that's coming in a few weeks. On December 2nd, that will give you more information to help you in setting this budget and addressing some of the major challenges of the organization. So thank you for this opportunity. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne, for that comprehensive presentation. I look forward to diving in deeper with the finance director at our next meeting. But as I said at the beginning of this, I think the presentation, the thoughtfulness, your experience obviously comes through in this, and it's imperative that this is in a format that is understandable and digestible, not just to the council, but to the public as well. So thank you, and to the staff for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, moving on, public comment, 3 minutes each, if there's any public to come.
Got one.
Do we have a chance
All
to
right.
make any comment before public comment, just in regards to the budget presentation?
It's a question for the Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's not any other questions, it's just, again, I go back to, I think, one of the first comments I remember you sharing about budget is that the city's budget tells a story, and you've told quite a story tonight. I'm a little overwhelmed at how much reading I'm going to have to do. So in some ways, thank you, but
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
I just, there's so much to figure out and understand and learn about this, and where our priorities, and it's just, I think, important to really take that time to do that. So thank you for everything you put into creating this, and everyone who helped with that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, public comment. I think I saw Tim stepping up. Hello.
Hey there. Hi, folks. I will keep this brief. I know we've been here a little bit. The decision
Say
has
your
already
name
been...
and your address for the record, Tim.
Oh, I'm sorry. Timothy McLeod, 4530 Orchid Drive. Thanks for the
Great,
reminder.
thanks.
Decision has already been made about what's going to go on the back berm, so there's not much more I'll say about that other than I'm disappointed. Even with, and as someone who is right now leading SEED and has a great relationship, I think, with our public works director, who's doing a great job. What's going to happen after you denude the back berm? And that's a rhetorical question, of course, because we live in the Piedmont region and more trees are going to show up. And we do not have the staff power to send our few city public works folks to pluck out every tree that's going on the back. I understand that we have a dam, which, just for clarification on folks on the internet or whatever, is a bunch of impacted clay that separates our lake from the stream. That is the thing that we're calling the dam. So by its nature on both sides, it has waterways, shores, that have to be stabilized somehow. And how nature does that is with vegetation. Now, I say this to respect that y'all are looking at a liability standpoint, but it breaks my heart to think about all of the stuff that has grown up there that is going to get cut down. And like Councilmember Torrance said earlier, this isn't about aesthetics. If we say what we mean about caring for the natural environment that we're around, then you don't just dismiss this stuff as, oh, just decoration that we put on top. So I know it's a difficult decision that you have to make, but I'm really going to have to come around to being okay with this. It's just sad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, reports and other business. Any council comments?
Mayor, I'd just like to report that I went to my first DeKalb Sports Commission meeting, and Madam CEO was there, and we got to talk a good bit, and I met Mayor Mock, who's the mayor of Chambly, had a good talk, and I think it's going to be a great networking opportunity for Pine Lake. As we get closer to FIFA, we're going to be talking about maybe doing like a viewing party in conjunction with every other city in DeKalb. There's going to be a lot of really cool initiatives that Madam CEO and the commission is cooking up. So I'm excited to report that as we go.
Great. Thank you. Any other council comment?
This is came from an email that was sent from the representative Georgia Forestry Commission to Mayor Hall, who then helped loop me into this, and I had a meeting with an urban and community forestry specialist who's offering technical assistance and other information that may include invasive management plans. Encouraged us to continue moving forward to try to regain our tree city, and that he would support us in that application process. And I forwarded that information to our public works director and our city manager, and we're going to set up a time for him to come out and walk our green space to come up with, and they do a very comprehensive invasive management plan. He also will be able to help coming up with, in the future, tree canopy management plan as well. So not just taking care of what we have, but also replace what we've lost, which I think would fit into our green space master plan, is just also how do we maintain the green space while we're losing green space. So more information to come.
Great. Thank you. Any other council comment? Okay. Information for the news blast.
Our public works director has something to say. Yes.
Mr. Kendrick.
Thank you. I hope everybody got a copy of your draft Green Space Master Plan. Some more reading. Just want to give you a little update. The AECOM is going to run the program. It will be on a Teams platform. Like I said, they have experience doing this, so they think that's a better platform than Zoom. What we need to work on is what the mayor calls like the run-up show, so that we can get the best out of our 2-hour window. And also, one of the decisions that I guess staff would need is, are we going to publish this draft online for the public to be able to see it, or how would you like to go about disseminating that? Or do you?
May I? I think the public is absolutely going to want to see something that they can either print and put in their hands or view online before the meeting, if they're going to be able to formulate reasonable questions. And I'm assuming that even though we're using Teams, which I would agree is better than Zoom for this type of thing, you know, you might have, in addition to all of us on our individual machines, you might wind up with 100 people. You know, are these individual people going to be able to ask a real question?
Well, see, that's some of the decisions that need to go on now, because if you, like you said, if you're going to have 100 people there, there's no way you're going to get 100 questions and responses in a 2-hour period. So it might be something that we need to
solicit questions in advance.
Questions in advance, and we kind of collated them down to, you know, different categories and those kind of things. And the most repetitive question, you know, kind of rises to the top.
Sure.
And we kind of settle before the meeting of, you know, we've got 20 questions that are representative of what everybody has submitted, and we go over that point. And then we might, my suggestion would be that any unanswered question still be able to be submitted and addressed, you know, prior to adoption of the actual plan.
I would think the
Yeah.
sooner you can put something out into people's hands so that they can respond with questions, if they're given instructions on who to send those questions to and so forth, the better.
And I'm just gonna caution, because I've got a meeting with them set up tomorrow. When it's a big document to send, and even in Adobe, I had some issues downloading it, and I think it was around 70 pages. So that's really what the question I was asking about. How do we? I'm gonna have to get some direction from probably their IT people, in conjunction with our IT folks, of how do we get it, you know, whatever type of link that we place on our website for them to be able to access it.
Maybe if you have them put it on something like Google Docs where people can, you know, be given a link to a shared document.
Dropbox.
Can I say something? I can't tell if there's things. Mr. Kendrick, I'll get with you about the run of show just to kind of talk through it. The idea behind this is it's easier. It's a smaller lift on the tech side to be able to share and make sure everybody can see and hear. Also on the staff side, given just the crunch with budget and all the things that are going on. But we do, you know, whether a town hall is in person or remote, we want it to feel interactive and have space for questions. So I want to talk through roles. I know I spoke with Councilmember Goldberg about potentially fielding questions and collating them in real time. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of the same kinds of questions, so we can kind of maybe leave some space at the end. And like you're saying, collect some in advance. There's also a program called smallpdf.com. It's free, where you can compress PDFs to make them small and emailable. I can send you that information, or I use it a lot for work.
Please.
And yeah, let's get together offline and just kind of talk through it.
Cool.
I think,
All right.
to make sure we capture everything.
Okay.
But we should put that in the news blast, that there's the upcoming Green Space Master Plan Town Hall, and it's at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, December 17th.
And make sure you let them know that it's not live.
It is virtual, and we'll need to get a link
Yeah.
in there. I can get with Ned on that, or I'm sure he's already on it.
Yeah, they're gonna, that's what I say, that's part of our meeting tomorrow. And then loop
Yeah.
that in, and we'll start putting everybody together so we can
Perfect.
get everything, you know, advertised.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and the last thing, paving ought to be complete by tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we caught some cold weather here, and that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Still, that's amazing. Great work.
thank you. And thanks to
Thank you.
the neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your communication around that project with schedule changes and all the stormwater things going on and everything. Great work.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, guys.
Good name. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Real quick for the news blast, Mayor.
Oh, yeah, is there more?
Just
News
real quick,
blast? Yes.
the next community focus chat, whatever, we're still struggling with the name, is going to be November 22nd in the clubhouse from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Great.
And if you could say in there, show up at any, where conversation, it doesn't just start at 11, it's ongoing, show up whenever you can show up.
Great.
I have to ask real quick, question for the Mayor Pro Tem. If she happened to notice that the colors on the Kingfisher cartoon are now,
I'm so
oh,
sorry, I meant
that's
to
fine.
comment on that. Yes,
That was for you.
very nice.
He has been sitting on the edge of his seat waiting to hear that.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, y'all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
No, I'll second
Is there a
that. I
All in
second.
favor?
You should be proud.
Aye.
Aye.